Hello and welcome to the May Steeltoe Community Update. We've got some announcements and some demos, so hopefully you'll find this interesting. First up, this is going to be the last time we have this meeting at this time slot. We're going to bump the meeting forward by a couple of hours to accommodate for new team members in Europe. And so just keep an eye on the Steeltoe.io community meeting page. We'll have a link for that in YouTube later. And we'll be sure that that page stays up to date. In terms of general announcements, I suppose I could share my screen here. We've got a new release for Steeltoe recently out, the 3.2.0 RC1. The release notes are available on GitHub. There are several new features, new bug fixes, and we should have a GA version of that coming soon, hopefully in the next week. Steeltoe users might also be interested to note that we have some related work done for Visual Studio. There's an extension to support working with Tanzu application service or theoretically any Cloud Foundry platform. We'll have a demo of that shortly. And also this new version of Steeltoe includes a fairly major feature with a lot of OpenTelemetry updates, specifically exporting to Wavefront. With that, I'm going to have a member of the Visual Studio extension team. Andrew, I think, is going to give us a little demo and show everybody how that works.
Cool. Yeah. So for those who haven't seen it, we've been building this extension for Visual Studio. Works on 2019 and 2022. And yeah, like Tim said, it's supposed to help you orchestrate all your apps and orgs and spaces that you've got in Tanzu application service. Give a brief run through here, but there's plenty more info on our GitHub repo. Head over to the wiki for kind of a full explanation of all the features and stuff. It's Tanzu Toolkit for Visual Studio. But yeah, so in a nutshell, here's what the extension does so far. I've got a .NET 6 app over here. It's a fairly bare bones web app generated doing a .NET new. The extension is installed into Visual Studio here. And one of the most important tool windows it provides is this Tanzu Application Service Explorer. Excuse me. So popping that open, it's a regular tool window like you'd expect anything else like your Solution Explorer to be in Visual Studio. And it lets you log into your Tanzu application service. So we've got a sandbox environment that I'll log into now. I've got some credentials saved in my paste buffer, so I'm going to paste stuff in off the screen, but I'll show you each screen as they go. Here we go. So I'm just about to log in here. You can name it something cool if you like. So there you go. Once you have connected, you can provide either your username and password as a regular credential login, or if it's enabled, you can log in with SSO as well. So going to be bold and show what that looks like here. Redirects you to the login page you might be familiar with. Again, I'm going to do this off screen so you don't steal all my secrets. Give me 1 minute here. Here is the result of that. Gives me a passcode, which I can copy and bring right back to the extension. There we go. So we're all logged into my cool Taz environment. And you can see all the orgs and spaces that you as this user have access to. You can see apps that are up and running. You can stop them. You can delete them. You can delete routes associated with them. Can reload things to make sure they did what you asked. Yep, there you go. You can push new apps. So let me show you what that looks like. Over in the Solution Explorer, I'm going to give a right click to the project that I'm working on here, this web app one. Show you some of the pages here. It's got a couple home pages, index page, privacy page. So these are two new buttons exposed by the extension. One is to push your app to Tanzu application service, and you are free to do what you will. At this stage, you can provide a manifest that is probably the most straightforward way to go about things. I've got a sample one here. I'll show you what that looks like actually. They're pushing to Linux. We can call it Web App Linux. Use a .NET Core build pack and push to the Linux stack. So if I want to select that manifest, I can hit this button. But maybe I want to change it to my cool web app instead. Select wherever you want. And if that's not enough customization for you, feel free to scroll down here. Anything you can put in a regular CF manifest, you're welcome to import, and it'll pick that up. But we provide some handy common options that people might want to tweak here down below, binding to the services that are available to you, etc. So pushing that will probably take a while, and we don't really have to sit there and watch this if we don't want to. I could go through a remote debug flow as well. I think that's one of the newest, most interesting features, but any questions up until this point for those who haven't seen it?
Do we also have a dark mode?
Yes, I'm going to show you here. In fact, let me bump the font as well in case it's hard to see. Oops.
This extension is using a Visual Studio community package to match the theming found in your Visual Studio, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But it should adjust to any sort of theming that you're doing in your environment.
So there you go. Here's your dark mode feature.
Great, very nice.
But easier on the eyes. Again, that might take a little bit to keep going, but let's. You can see it coming up on the left there. Eventually, that'll turn green. Let's give a quick remote debug flow here. So when I hit right click, in case that was too quick, when I hit right click on the Solution Explorer again, hitting this remote debug button is going to look for an app up in Tanzu Application Service with the same name as the project. So here it was looking for Web Application 1. If it doesn't match up, you're free to either push a new app to debug, or and that'll just bring up the same flow you saw before for deploying a new app. Importantly, if you're going to do that, make sure you hit this button down here called Configure for Remote Debugging. That'll install the remote debugging agent and let you actually stay aware of what's going on with the app. But if the name doesn't match up, just select the one you have in mind, rather the one that is loaded in Visual Studio. Must have passed it. This one is called. So I've already pushed this one, I think, with the remote debugging agent installed. Oh, I guess not. Maybe we can push a new one. It is up and running, isn't it? It is up and running. Try that one more time, otherwise I'll try pushing it again.
Yeah, Andrew, what do you mean by pushing it again? It's already running. So can you kind of clarify that for me?
Yeah, I think I'm guessing here the reason it's not finding the remote debugging agent on Web App Linux is the first time I pushed it, it didn't have the VS debugger included with the bits that went up there.
So that second push new app to debug is actually pushing the kind of the sidecar for the debugger.
Yeah, it'll do the exact same thing. In fact, we don't have to go through that button at all. It's just selecting this option as well. That
Gotcha.
is responsible for getting the VS debug in there with the app when it goes up there. Yeah. That's the thing, by the way, that Visual Studio is going to connect to over SSH for handling the debugging stuff. Yeah, let's try this remote debug. We selected this, so it'll do a publish of the app first, and then install the VS debug, and then push it all up. This could take a couple of minutes. So,
While that's running, do you want to show the logging? Log
Sorry.
monitoring?
Oh, logging. Yeah, totally. Yeah, let's do that with this one because we know it's up and running. In addition to starting, stopping, deleting your app, you can stream logs. So this will start off with a recent log dump because nothing recent has happened on this app. But as we keep that alive, maybe we can do this sort of thing. Any events that happen on the app should be streamed here. Kind of tough to read that out, but I should have cranked the font more. But you can see roughly this is getting your home page. And then if we head over to privacy, you can see a new log end up for getting privacy, stuff like that. Here, stop, whatever.
Very nice. It's like Apps Man in Visual Studio.
Be nice if we could do everything Apps Manager did, but we're starting with what we can. Yeah.
Yeah, the
Cool.
important bits.
Those are the big portions. I really wish I could show you this remote debugging. Maybe we can come back in a minute.
Yeah, I think if we hit all the features, we could move on and come back to this.
That sounds good. If we don't come back or aren't able, actually, it might be done in a second here, but I was going to say, get another plug for the wiki. We've got some videos up there. They may be a little outdated, but yeah, there's more info and demos of how the stuff should work. So if you don't see it today, you can always head there.
Hey, Andrew, so what is the mechanism by which the extension knows that the remote debugger is running on the task instance?
Yeah, it uses the CFCLI to investigate that. So
Gotcha.
it knows the expected name of the process, and then it's going to go look for that, make sure it's running.
Andrew, where was that wiki on the GitHub?
Yeah.
Which repo was it? If you could just let it sit on screen for a moment.
Yes.
That's great. Thank you.
Sure.
We'll be sure to include a link to that as well in the YouTube video.
So the CFCLI does like a local PS or get current processes and then looks for this name, and if it's not there, then it says, so we need to push it. Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah, it's doing that via CFSSH.
Gotcha. Okay.
And CFSSH is also the adapter that Visual Studio uses to host the debugging communication as well.
Awesome.
It does looks like it pushed, so unless something else is going on, I might give the remote debug another try here. I did have some issues before this meeting, so fair warning in case something doesn't work. But okay, looks like something else might be going on. Well, I'll have to look into that, but head over to the video to see how it should work.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yep.
I think from there, Daniel, Chris, you're here now. We have an initializer update at some point. But let's have Daniel go next, and we'll come back to Initializer.
All right. Let me share my screen here. Yeah, so I want to give a quick update about the metrics changes with 3.2. And of course, we've kind of moved up from using an old kind of workaround implementation of a partially implemented project with OpenTelemetry a little while ago to a place where it's GA now. So we're able to bring it on. For those who are not familiar with it, it's an open source project that kind of supports several languages, and it attempts to be a unified way of instrumenting, aggregating, and exporting metrics. together with traces and logs in as opposed to the old way of having separate stacks for your tracing and a separate stack for metrics and trying to tie them together. So it comes with several extensibility points, which makes it easy for a framework like Steeltoe to adopt it and add additional features and functionality to it, as we're doing here. So that's really brief intro to OpenTelemetry. You can check them out at opentelemetry.io and on their GitHub. So for today, I'm going to demo the fortune teller app using OpenTelemetry metrics and exporting to Wavefront, or what's called Tanzu observability. And if it's one of our sample applications that has been recently updated to push metrics and traces. So that was a old, let me go there real quick. Samples. I'm looking at the management, management tracing. So this is the fortune teller app that was made originally to demo tracing, distributed tracing. And it a brief intro to this, if you're not familiar, is it has a backend service called fortune teller service and a fortune teller UI, and it uses Eureka running. In my case, I'm running it in Docker. That kind of ties it together. So here I have a local instance of Docker. I guess I've already started running it. Oh yeah, it's already running. But let me show the important bits of the application here, where you as a developer would need to know how to add OpenTelemetry or Wavefront, really. So there's a new README now. And so here's the basic interface. You have your web host builder, and there are extension mechanisms to add metrics. And if you want to add tracing, it's separate. So you can, you have to say, I want to add metrics and I want to distribute tracing. And when you do it, it's slightly different how it actually gets configured. Whereas when you use metrics, you have to say add wavefront metrics, and it expects you to have at least these bits of information for it to talk to an external, to the Wavefront instance. So I haven't talked about what Wavefront is. So Wavefront is a telemetry view, a single pane to view your traces, metrics, and observe, get insights, and observe your system. And it is very scalable, and it is yeah, basically built for this purpose. And it's provided by VMware, and it's called Tanzu Observability. So that's like a brief intro, a terrible intro, but it's a brief intro. But anyway, so to get your metrics there, so you need to tell it where to go. And in our case, it might be vmware.wavefront.com or wavefront.surf if you sign up for a trial URL, or if your company has purchased it, it might be your company.wavefront.com. And there are instructions on how to get these tokens that are described in the documentation. But as far as adding metrics, you're expected to use one of these extension methods. And another way, of course, with all Steeltoe, we've tried to give the ability to just say, add Steeltoe, and then using your the set of dependencies that are included, the nuggets that are included in your project, it'll do the right thing. So if you have, for example, with tracing, you have Zipkin included, then it'll add that and so forth. So it's like a one-shot, one-liner that you don't have to worry about, but you still need to obviously provide the configuration. So with metrics, you say add wavefront metrics, and you give this information. With tracing, you just say add distributed tracing ASP.NET Core, and when these bits of information are there, it configures your traces for Wavefront. So that's pretty much all you need to know about this particular project. So that's the README, and inside the project, most of our here's an example. I didn't want to automatically add metrics for people who are looking at traces, but if you came here and wanted to add metrics, there's a helpful commented out line of code for you to uncomment and get going. And that's what I have running locally here. That's the process that's running. So, and in addition to that, you have your app settings. Let's quickly look at app settings. And you have two islands of functionality here. And it's made that way to kind of mirror other applications that support Wavefront. I have this functionality. And so you have your general management, and under management, you have your endpoints, and there's a section called metrics, and you obviously can set your observers, like which ones you want running. So you can increase or decrease the amount of instrumentation that's happening. It's flexible for you to do that. And then on top of that, there's now a new export section and with Wavefront, and that's where that goes. And there's an additional additional configuration that you can override the defaults of your the name and the service that is reporting this metric. So then later you'll see in the dashboard from Wavefront how you can filter down your dashboards to your instance. And the configuration for the other application or the other project, which is the fortune teller UI, is identical, right? So it's basically the same thing. The only difference between the two projects is one of them calls into Eureka and says, here's Wavefront. And so when you have traffic going, you should be able to see metrics and traces. So that's the fortune teller app. And here I have it running. And let's head over to the Wavefront UI. So in my case, the way I get to it is vmware.wavefront.com, and look at my dashboards. And I've started creating what will hopefully, or what will one day be the official Steeltoe dashboard. When you're on the Spring side of things, you automatically get the ability to have an opinionated dashboard and want to provide the same set of features for this. And so here right off the top, you can see this is running on my desktop, and it's running in a few other places, but right now we're focused on this particular instance of the application. And you can see there's a few the services, and you can filter them down to metrics to individual service. Let's kind of pick the fortune teller service. And and you have some information here about things like process uptime, CPU usage, and so forth. Like the thread pool, see how many active threads are there and which of them are worker and completion port threads, heap usage. And there will be more stuff coming soon. I'm not sure why this isn't populated yet, but anyway, so this is what I have so far. And there's something similar, and you can filter down to individual applications like I just did. And you can, so the source by default, it defaults to the localhost DNS name. So if it's multiple instances, you can obviously filter by that or not, you know. And when you have traces enabled, it kind of nicely detects that it's available for you, and you can go and examine the traces. And before I do that, let me hit this a couple of times so we actually have some traces. Sometimes it, oh yeah, there's the one. I was trying to keep this open for you to find, but I think that one didn't work. But I think it's because of this live view was there. But the one we just did, I think is there. Is that right? No, this is the old one. Never mind. So what happens on the Wavefront side is it does something called intelligent sampling, and actually the instrumentation on the Steeltoe side also does this. And unless you have the setting here that says, let me go to Visual Studio here, Studio. And here's the app settings. So you have tracing, you can set your always sample to true to kind of, so the idea with sampling is you don't want to inundate your system with too much information, and you kind of are able to get some visibility by just sampling and reducing your load on your data and on your servers. And for testing and debugging purposes, demoing purposes, it's good to always sample so that we don't miss any traces. But unfortunately, that's the same thing that's going on the server side. And what happens is it basically misses some of the traces unless you say you can create a mechanism to tell it to always sample. So now that I accidentally close it, let me get back there. For some reason, Zoom and running all these things, I think it's creating a bit of a load on my system, and I can hear the fan spinning up. So yeah, there you go. So you got some here. It's a basic, what you'd find on Zipkin. You have your spans and containing traces containing multiple spans here, and you have your front-end app, back-end app. Presumably, if you have more, it'll all show up in the trace map. So that's nice. And you can filter by outliers, those sort of things. And here's what's called red metrics. So far, we have not implemented these. These are metrics that are tied to your traces. So most of the Wavefront integrations, especially on the Java side, support these, and other languages presumably support these. I created an issue on our Steeltoe site. PRs are welcome since this is a community meeting, but yeah, it shouldn't. And it's well documented on the Wavefront side, so that's something that's coming up. Yeah, so I think that's all I had to show. Any questions?
And the docs will be up to date in the next week or so,
Yeah.
around the same time that we ship the release, right?
Yeah, so I have the docs site like local. So since we're all here, team, you can take a quick look at it. So what I've done is, we used to have a metrics endpoint called metrics.md, but I used to have observers, metrics observers off on its own because it deserved a longer explanation. But then I realized we've got the exporters all through the endpoint code, which didn't make sense. So I kind of consolidated all of the metrics introduction and language in one area. So then you can say, oh, here's a common way to do this, and here's what you need to know as far as instrumentation with metric observers, and how it gets configured, and then specifically call out metric exporters, and then talked about different ways of getting your metrics into other systems, Wavefront and TAS, and using any generic Prometheus server compatible system like Grafana, and also included AppLiveView and Spring Boot admin here. And the rest of it, I kind of condensed the metrics info here to not have any information about Cloud Foundry forwarders or any of the things that we used to have there. And also did the same thing for distributed tracing, kind of made it generic, exporting to traces, and then added a section for Tanzu observability by Wavefront. Yeah, and there's a sample app that I kind of talked about that should get people going. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that update, Daniel.
Not a problem. I'm gonna stop sharing now. Back to you, Tim.
Well, I think, Chris, if you're ready, we'll kick it right over to you for an update on Initializer.
Yeah, sure. Well, recently Dave finished adding a sort of new category of options to the Steeltoe template around messaging. And the one messaging service we support right now is RabbitMQ. So we have two new options available through Initializer, one to configure RabbitMQ client and one for the listener. And in the actual template itself, we have a third option, which is just a convenience option, which is a combination of the two. Let me share our screen. So what I'm going to do in the bottom half here, just to give a peek under the covers a little bit of the Initializer, I'm going to go ahead and connect to our Kubernetes cluster using a tool called K9s. If you're not familiar with that, it's a nice little CLI interface into Kubernetes. And we have a service Initializer, which is a sort of a wrapper around the .new command. So we'll see the .new command being issued when we generate these some of these projects using our two new options. This exists in staging. We haven't pushed to production yet. When we release 3.2, we'll probably also push these Initializer and template changes as well.
Hey, Chris, is it K9 also giving you that fancy GUI and shell in ASCII UI?
This one right here,
Yeah.
that fancy, that's my prompt.
Yeah. What's that?
This is just a terminal, but I have a prompt for my Z shell, which has some.
No, not just the prompt, just the whole like using arrow keys to navigate. That's the K9.
Yeah, great. So this is that. So what you look at here is the K9's interface. And if I, oops, didn't do that quite right. Yeah, so this is everything running in our in our cluster. Kind of scope it by namespace. This is the Initializer namespace, and these are the components that comprise the Initializer. There's one here called Net Core Tool Service, which is a service that exposes the .NET new command for us. It runs the .NET new and captures the output and sends it back as a zip file through our pipeline into the back to into the browser here. I just want to see the logs. So I've navigated through, and I'm actually looking at the logs for that particular container running on our cluster. So back up to the top here, let's go. These are messaging, new group messaging. We have a RabbitMQ messaging client and listener. Take a look at the client for a moment. One thing I have noticed today, our network seems to be up and down in the staging cluster. So it's about 70% hit rate here for success. It looks pretty good. And in this bottom window down here, you see where the .NET new command was run. Maybe. This is the RabbitMQ client that we enabled on that option. It's all being set up for you, a little stub. In the startup.cs, we see all the this RabbitMQ services being added. And similarly, there's a listener that you can add. Oh, no, that's the one. And here we got a new service, RabbitMQ listener service. Again, just kind of stub to get you started, and also all the obligatory configuration and startup CS. As I mentioned, there's a convenience option too. For if actually running the .NET new command from the CLI, there is an option that enables both of these for you. So that's a little update with what's going on with Initializer and templates. I think that's it for now. I don't know if we've covered this before, but we have added F# as well. I don't remember if we've talked about that in previous community meetings.
Hey,
So
Chris,
for all those options you have, you can get an F# version of the project as well.
Does it also add that Rabbit listener to the service container, the sample or the initializer output?
For the RabbitMQ?
Yeah.
That would be, Dave would probably know better than I on that.
Oh, okay. So you didn't make any changes to the program.cs or
Take a look.
startup.cs. I don't know.
We can take a look.
That's fine. I was
Does add, it does add the listener to it.
okay. Cool.
All right. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you for that update, Chris.
All right.
I think we already mentioned that the Steeltoe 3.2.0 GA should be coming very, very soon. We're just waiting for a couple of small bug fixes to get PR'd and merged in, and we should have that released out shortly. Additionally, .NET Beyond happened since the last of our community meetings, and so there's a link in the meeting notes document to the recordings from that. So go ahead and check those recordings out if you didn't get a chance. Otherwise, thank you everybody for your time. It was, oh,
Sorry,
yeah.
I'm back to redeem myself. I figured out why I couldn't get remote debug to pop up, if anyone's curious. It wasn't anything with the code. I just clicked the wrong app. If everyone has time, I'm keen to
Yeah.
show you what it looks like.
That looks
Do this
good.
again. Don't blame the team. Just blame me for not reading the window more carefully. All right, here we go. I forgot that the issue last time was that it was saying couldn't find the remote debugging agent on the app. That's just because I clicked the wrong app in here. The one that I pushed with the remote debugging agent was called Remote Debug App. If I can find it here. That's what I get for rushing through stuff. Did I miss it? Oh, no, there it is.
Maybe it would help, like you had like a little checkbox on the window that only shows once running the remote debug agent.
Yeah, that I was thinking about that too. Never thought about it before now, but now that we've got enough apps in there, it's definitely not the easiest menu to wade through. So here we go. This would better work.
Maybe make the columns sortable if the list is long.
Could you say that once more? I missed it.
Maybe make the columns in the grid sortable so you can know where it is.
That could be really handy for sure. Here we go. So this is an output window that's popped up to confirm, yep, looks like we've got some remote debugging conversation going on here. I'm going to revisit this app over here called Remote Debug App, and I'll try to side-by-side these once more. I've placed a couple of breakpoints into the source code for this app. So there's one per page getter for the privacy and home pages. And if I try to go home, you will see an event pop up in the logs here, and then we'll see that we're stopped on that breakpoint. And then you do everything you're used to for debugging. Step through, look at saved values and stuff. And the app will be unresponsive until you continue. Continue. And then it'll actually show you the stuff. Same thing for going back and forth. So here we go. We are remote debugging. One word, if you are going to use this, because this has burned me before, hidden bat stop debugging will stop the app that's running on TAS. It will revive itself, but it'll take a few seconds to do that. So if you want to stop the remote debugging process without stopping the app running itself, going to debug and then heading to detach all is the way to do that. So going here will keep the app alive, but you're no longer debugging. So there you go. That's what that looks like.
Yay, very nice.
Very nice.
Great, nice.
Glad
All
it
right.
worked.
All right. For real this time. Thanks again, everybody.